Get Spiritual. I'm your host, Annie, and I'm here with my bestie, Ashley, and we'd love for you to join us as we discuss all aspects of spirituality and wellness. So sit back, take a breath, and let's get spiritual. Welcome back to Let's Get Spiritual.
We're back.
Oh God, it's been so long. Like the last time we recorded, we were like, it's been so long. And then it's been just as long.
I know.
Maybe.
Sorry, guys. Life's happening. Big changes for both of us.
Seriously, though, let's give a little bit of a shout out to both of us for new jobs, making big moves in our lives.
Yeah.
It's just been a little too busy to record.
It has been. Career gains have been happening.
Yes.
Well, your personal life is popping. My personal life is my career is on fire and my social dating life is a dumpster fire.
Well,
so at least it's
one
both
thing
lit.
at a time. Yes. They're both lit. That's great. Well, we're back this week to talk about something that we've been just talking about a little bit in almost every episode. I think we bring it up. It's childhood trauma. No.
It is magical. If you choose to grow from it like we have, because it technically realizing our childhood trauma did help us start our spiritual paths of bettering ourselves.
Yeah. And I kind of talk about it in here, like the way it relates to spirituality is that I think when you're on a spiritual path, you're doing all this like soul searching and digging, you uncover that there's childhood trauma. So it's like just chicken and the egg. I don't know which one.
Oh, that's still clapping. I was trying to find a bad one because I was like, maybe it is bad, but
no,
I don't know. My fingers kept.
I guess it's good. Spirit's saying it's good. So learning about childhood trauma and identifying it and working through everything it brings up because it's trauma.
I was going to say, is there like a real clinical definition of childhood trauma?
I guess
you're the notes lady.
The way that I kind of have it in there is that there is some type of parent, guardian, caregiver who was either not present in our lives or as children while we were developing, we were subject to some type of really dramatic, traumatic situation.
So what you're saying is an adult let us down as we were children.
Let us down, basically our needs were not met emotionally, or we were put in situations that were way too adult for our tiny little brains.
I feel like that's still happening sometimes.
Yeah, my brain has not developed.
I don't think I'm fully adult enough to deal with all of this.
So I personally believe that all of us have some sort of childhood trauma.
Oh, most definitely.
There's
just to varying degrees.
Well, and as children, we don't know what our needs are. Yeah. So how do we know that they're being met? We looked to our caregivers as it was literal survival. They wiped our ass, they fed us, they gave us a place that was safe from the outside dangers sometimes. But so, and even if we did have all those things and we had a good childhood, I still don't think it's possible for any parent to fully have been there for their kid. I find it's hard for any adult parent to provide and fulfill every emotional need of a child.
Well, and I also think that it's difficult for people to do that because of their own childhood trauma. I mean, to sit here and say we have childhood trauma, our parents did too.
Yes,
guess what? Our grandparents did too.
Generational, it's ancestral. It's been going on. And as we're becoming more conscious as just a community and as a entire collective, we're realizing this more and we're making this shift out of those experiences into more healthy ones where emotionally we can regulate ourselves a little bit better because we've been stuck in fight or flight for way too long and our bodies are in that response. So we'll get into it a little bit. But I did want to mention too that childhood trauma doesn't end with just our household and our caregivers, our parents, whomever was there. It could be extended family. That's
why I said adults let us down, just in general.
Teachers, people, peers, principals, people within your community that you've looked up to, your own superhero sports fan, that maybe you see a scandal about them in the news, any type of, as a kid, you're looking up to an adult and they kind of just let you down, or again, you're subject to very adult things when you're just trying to be a kid.
You're just trying to figure out what's happening with your little body and brain. Yeah.
Yes. So, and ultimately it could have been one major event or a series of events that as a child, and it could be literally from inside the womb all the way up until like teenage years. I mean, we're still developing. We're always kind of developing and changing. So the thing with childhood trauma is that like, because it's in the early development, what we learn in that time sticks with us and is literally held in our energy centers.
Yeah.
Until we learn how to release that
I'm
kind of
still
stuff.
trying. I just came from a therapy session,
no,
girl.
It's a lifelong process, unfortunately. And like the deeper rooted the traumas, the harder it is to release them. I always think of like
episode, but I'm glad we're doing it.
Yeah. And like, even when I talk about chakras in the session, how they're supposed to be like a wheel of energy spinning. I always think of like debris as like our energetic blockages. So I think of like a drain or like a dam, and that water is like clogged there. And sometimes there's a lot of debris that we gotta get out.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's just a couple little logs and stuff, and it's a little bit easier to clear that energy and those blockages out than when it's like deep rooted. So I would say that most of us had a pretty decent childhood with loving parents that, we could say like, I didn't have a terrible childhood, but our love could have also been conditional. Whereas like you had to perform a certain way to receive attention, or if you started acting out at the wrong place at the grocery store, then you didn't feel like your love was unconditional because you're being mean to me right now. Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways that it was brought up into our lives, and a lot of different ways that it comes out in our lives. And again, it gets stored within our bodies. In those early years, we're learning how to interact with the world. And when that kind of gets disrupted, it kind of leaves like a scar, like an emotional scar that we're stuck working with and dealing with for literally the rest of our lives.
Well, and sometimes, I mean, it's not even working with or dealing with. Sometimes you're reacting from that.
Yeah. And that's mostly what it is. Again, it's that like survival, like fight or flight. You never really leave that because your environment may not have felt safe, whether it was emotionally safe where you can openly talk about your feelings, or physically safe where there was someone who was verbally abusive, physically abusive, and you didn't feel like safe at all for your physical safety. So it's really interesting that through like my crystal therapy, I've noticed that a lot of these deep-rooted issues stay stuck in the chakras that relate with early childhood development, in the root, in the sacral, and sometimes in the solar plexus, but not as much, but definitely in the root and sacral chakras reflect it a lot. And as we know, and as we learned through those episodes, having blockages in any of our chakras can negatively affect both our physical bodies and our emotional state and everything. So it's really good to just bring awareness here and take different steps to regulate your emotions and to release these blockages that may be there. So, and then like carrying all this energy throughout our childhoods and having these events like stored within us all the way through adulthood. And even if we are working through it, it kind of reveals itself as stress, anxiety, depression, lack of trust. Like if we couldn't trust our caretakers, how are we going to trust anyone in the world?
Exactly. Well, and it also just, how do you even trust yourself at that point? I mean, it really, if it is not addressed and not like kind of acknowledged, it can mess up a lot of stuff when you're an adult.
It really kind of develops into like our actual personalities then. Like some people are just like super hyper vigilant all the time, or always constantly stressed. And it's like, there's no way to really get anyone out of that unless they really work through how they got there.
And like you said, I mean, there's some people who had absolutely horrible childhood. So the trauma and the way that they react now as an adult is like, you're kind of like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
But then there's also people that, when you really look at it from the outside, like, they had a quote unquote good childhood. So those are usually the people that I always find are the hardest, probably,
or masking it.
Yeah. The hardest to like deal with stuff, because they don't, when they think of a bad childhood or childhood trauma, they think of like abuse and neglect. And, they might not have
even the people are like, oh, I got beat around a few times and I turned out okay. I'm like, did you though? Can you handle it?
Well, yeah. And that's the thing. Like, like you don't. Yeah.
Yeah, just because
No.
you're saying
Just
you
because you're
turned out okay.
surviving doesn't mean you're thriving. And
Exactly.
really, the thriving part is what you want in your
Yeah, you're
adult
still
life.
stuck in survival,
Yeah.
that fight or flight, and it doesn't like leave us unless it's addressed. It's really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like the hypervigilance one is one that I've noticed too, where someone's just like very jumpy at like the littlest things.
Yeah.
Disassociation's a really big one that I mean, a lot of kids in traumatic situations disassociate in the moment because I mean that means like you're physically present but mentally checked out.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to protect themselves in a situation where they just hear their parents screaming down the
Yeah.
hallway, they might sit in their room and cower and kind of just like sit there and disassociate, like put headphones on, listen to music,
Yeah, I
or
was
play
going to
their
say
video
like kids
games.
that had like, video games or they, picked up and sometimes unfortunately childhood traumas can lead to discovering talents you have. Maybe you
Yeah.
like listen to music, got into music, would draw, do stuff like that. So it's such a crazy thing to think about how the lives that the adults in your life led, how they can really affect your development throughout the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like if you have this like hyper vigilance, well, then you're always going to be on edge throughout
Yeah.
your entire adult life. Like everything's just like heightened and oh my God, what's going to happen? Oh my gosh, if I go
Yeah.
outside today, is a plane going to crash on top of me or am I going to get into a car accident? Like you have
Mm-hmm.
that like always like buzzy state to yourself. And that does so much damage to your nervous system and to the rest of your body
Yeah.
being in that state all the time. And it's really, I mean, it's not easy to bring yourself to a calm state.
No, and
It's
sometimes
work.
people don't even realize that they're doing it. I had that conversation today in my therapy session where I can be in a very stressful situation and fully not acknowledge
I
that it's
thrive in
stressful.
chaos, girl. I know what you mean. Like, and that's sometimes because we were in stressful situations and learned as children how to manage the
The
stress
stress. I
and
mean,
how
and we're
to,
not even managing it well because in the end, my body usually ends up doing something
yeah, like your
horrible to
stomach
me
gets
to show me that
upset,
I'm
or like,
stressed.
yeah,
Yeah.
or like you start to have like
Mm-hmm.
palpitations. Like, there's a lot of bodily
I mean, my anxiety,
expressions. Yeah.
you've witnessed how bad my anxiety can be, panic attacks. And
Yeah, they're
that's
not
something that I
fun.
just started dealing with a few years ago because I was
Because
pushing
you
stuff
finally,
down
yeah, well, and
and
it
not
finally
acknowledging
got
it.
to the point where
I
it just
couldn't ignore
couldn't
it anymore.
keep it within your body anymore. It became an outwardly
Mm-hmm.
expression. And that's what happens with all of these stored things. If it continues into adulthood and these things continue to come up, I even feel like even if you've healed part of yourself, different relationships bring out
Oh my
stored
gosh, yeah, it
stuff.
triggers that stuff
Yeah,
most
like
definitely.
the deep stuff. So it's just crazy. But I feel like once we become more conscious and aware of it as a society and as a whole, we can all make better decisions for ourselves moving forward. And like, I just feel like we're all dysregulated. And I feel like with a lot of work and a lot of therapy, talk therapy, energy therapy, physical therapy, we can release a lot of these stored traumas and help our future generations not have to feel it. Like I feel like our society has so much disease and illness and it's because of this like heightened stress response in our bodies all the time and it comes out as physical illness because
Yeah.
there's so much dis-ease within our regulatory
Yeah.
system.
But I mean, and at the end of the day, we can't control the childhood that we had or the situations that may have instilled this like
Yeah.
trauma in our bodies, but we have to at some point in our lives realize that we do have as an adult control of our situations
Yeah.
and we can address things and we can start to make sense of things. And in making sense of things, it's you don't have to necessarily point fingers or
Yeah, you
blame
don't have to like
things or say it's
forgive
your fault.
anyone.
Yeah.
You can still be upset at the people who raised you into this in like state, but
Mm-hmm.
also like show empathy for them because you know it was passed on to them.
Right.
And
It's definitely
you
a
can,
journey of once you really understand why you have these, you know, stresses, things, and traumas in your life, you do take a moment and step back and you realize, oh, this person was only doing as best as they could
Yeah.
based on the things that
That they
they
knew.
knew and the things that they experienced as a child.
And
And
if
you really
they
start to
didn't
look
have
into
an
it more.
environment as a child that allowed them to speak freely about their emotions, that's like one of the number one things is like, especially men, when it's like, just stop crying. You're a boy. Boys don't cry. And it's
Yeah.
like, we're humans. Humans cry.
Cry and it's
Humans have
okay.
an emotion.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. And like, that's what I'm talking about. We need to get away from that completely and be like, oh, you're having an emotion. Let's work through it. Tell me about it.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you feel it in your body? How is it? Why are you think you're feeling this way? And like,
Yeah.
that's not allowed. It wasn't allowed
No.
for
And it's
so long.
honestly, it's not even allowed a lot
No, because
now.
now
So, yeah.
we're labeled as snowflakes because we talk about having feelings and
Yeah.
have feelings. That's not the case. No, we are humans working on ourselves and
Yeah.
identifying things that we're actually experiencing, not just ignoring them because it's
Exactly.
easier. It's
Yeah.
not
It's
easier.
not easier. Yeah.
It's harder, but also it's what will help me be able to live a better life for myself because I know that when things get triggered, and it's still a process, but I find myself going through the process is when I'm triggered now I can do things to regulate my triggers.
Yeah.
I can get myself back into my calm state more quickly, more at ease. Sometimes it's like a wave where it comes and it goes,
Mm-hmm.
but I still am able to kind of talk myself off that ledge off instead of spiraling into the anxiety, the upset stomachs, or like the clenched jaw all the
Yeah.
time and the shoulders holding all of our stress. Like kind of just learning how to release these things
Mm-hmm.
is really important. And like just holding space and allowing ourselves to have emotions. I think we don't allow ourselves to have emotions as adults because we weren't really allowed to freely express them as children.
Right.
I feel like kids sometimes don't know they're having emotions when they're having this like mental breakdown in the store.
Well, and they don't know because they're kids and they're like new to
They
this
don't
world and they don't know
know.
what emotions
And then
are.
we just have an adult emotional reaction to it and we get stressed because, oh my gosh, people are looking at me. Oh my gosh, this and that. And
Yeah.
like,
What are people thinking? Oh my gosh,
oh
they
my
probably
gosh,
think I'm a horrible
yeah, I'm
parent.
such a
It's like,
bad parent because I
no.
can't get my kid under control. It's like, no, you're not. You're a human. That's a human. They're trying to figure out what their
Yeah.
life is. And I know that like people will look at you and I specifically and say, well, you wouldn't know. You don't have kids.
First of all, I'm gonna go ahead and put this out
I know
here.
I was ready for it. This is my thing.
It is my new year. It just celebrated my birthday. I am
Yes.
37 years old and we're about to roll into the year of 2023 of our Lord. And
Yes.
if one more person tells me that, I'm gonna go off on you because I don't have to have a child to understand and recognize what another person is going through.
Yes.
You
And
don't.
also, we were children. We may not be parents, but we were once kids.
Yes.
And we know maybe what lacked in our lives and can relate to other people who have these types of experiences. And from an outside perspective, we can see maybe where things are not exactly where they should be, or where kids can't express themselves as freely as they should be able
to. And we're not saying that being parents are easy because
no,
we don't want children.
We're choosing
so we
not to have children.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
guess what? We can still see and give advice and still kind of see things outside of the stress in the situation, outside of your own childhood traumas while you're putting childhood trauma on your kid. Like, hi, we can see that on the outside.
Yes.
Just trying to be helpful because one day your kid might have to wipe my butt because I'm choosing not to have one. I don't want your messed up child to be my caretaker.
Be the one who's wiping my ass one day.
It takes a village, people, to raise a children. I'm trying to be this village because I don't want your adult hating child to be taking care of me at some point.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of just like sticky emotions around that because people who don't have kids, I feel like there's always this, well, you'll never understand.
There's always a stigma and there will probably always be a stigma. And I may go off on someone and they may still think I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Okay. Like we're never going to see eye to eye on that because at that person who's got however many kids will never know what it's like to be on our side and we'll never know what it's like to be on their side. And I think there just has to be a mutual understanding of like, I'm not invalidating the fact that you're a parent and the fact that it's stressful, but don't also think that my life isn't stressful just because I don't have kids too. And I feel that that comes from this generational societal like pressure of you must have a family and you must have
I was
kids.
going to say, for people that think that not having kids isn't stressful, do you understand how shamed I am by society for choosing
Yeah.
not to have a child?
Yeah. Like
that
that
is
alone
stressful
is
too.
stressful and
Yeah.
judgy. And it's annoying because we're all out here just trying to live our lives.
Yeah.
And instead of judging each other for how exactly those lives are being lived, why can't we just go different than me?
Yeah.
Not what I would have chose, but you know what? Do you?
Yeah.
And it's time that we get
about to have adult trauma about people with children.
And like I feel like having situations where unwanted children maybe being brought into the world, guys, this is going to be out after voting, but if
go vote please for our uteruses.
Yeah. It's very sticky situation, but I feel like the more unwanted children enter the world, the more of this childhood trauma
I was just going to say
is going to continue.
If you all think childhood trauma is a problem now, wait until we're forced to bring children into a world that we didn't want.
There's childhood trauma existing in families who wanted to bring children into the world. And I just couldn't imagine the amount of resentment of being forced into a situation.
We both love our parents, but our parents wanted us and caused childhood trauma. So
yeah, and it's all unintentional. It's not like they sat there going, I'm really going to mess this kid up for the rest of their life.
I hope not. Yeah.
If you did, then you need therapy.
But that's kind of what you're getting at, though, in that when people are forced into a situation, their reaction is going to be unintentional or intentionally like, I'm going to be crusty because I didn't want this to begin with. So
yeah,
that's just a lot. We're not going to get too much deeper into that topic because it's a trigger one. But
it is. And like speaking just of general triggers, I'll bring us back to that. The main thing when our triggers come up and when you start to identify these things is to like find where it's sitting in your physical body. So like I talked about regulating those emotions before. So if someone says something or if a situation triggers one of your trauma responses, you can feel hurt, sad, angry, upset, confused in the moment. There's a lot of feelings that come up, but it's also good to explore those feelings and where you're feeling it in the body. One of the things are like, is your chest tight? Are you sulking? Are you hiding because you feel shame? Are you clenching your jaw? Is your heart racing? Your palms sweaty? Like these are all physical expressions of our emotions coming out. And first identify the emotion like, oh my God, I feel really uncomfortable with what this person said. And then it's like, oh, where am I feeling it? Oh, I feel it in my gut. Like I just feel that like uncomfortable feeling. And then like kind of send it energy and release it from there. It's like, okay, I've identified it. I've released it. How can I overcome it? How can I address this issue? Do I need to remove myself for the situation to not feel these feelings? Like you have to start going through these things in your head. And it takes a lot of effort at first and a lot of navigating, but it becomes more easy.
It becomes more natural over time with anything. With practice, anything becomes easier.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be fun. Trust. No. I still hate it.
Like, especially when I have triggers that the anxiety, the panic attacks are like the epitome of like when you feel like you can't breathe or you feel that heaviness in your chest and that heart racing, like those are really hard to get out of.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's very difficult.
Sometimes it takes, that's one of those, you can't even go to work that day kind of things where you have to spend time just putting your mind and body back at an ease where it's not going to have this outward.
And you have to be okay too with stepping away from situations that cause that. Like for me, a lot of it, it was a lot of outside like life stuff, but work was a really big trigger for my anxieties because I already didn't have a lot of control over what was going on in my personal life. So then to also be put in a situation where for my literal survival, I felt like I had no control.
Yeah.
You have to be okay. And it made it worked itself out.
Yes.
Universe. P.S. Manifestation tip, throw it up in the air. Yeah, I've discovered it.
Throw it out.
It just worked twice this week. I'm rolling with it. But, I did. I had to be okay with being like, okay, you got to get away from this because it's literally not doing anything for my physical self, which means I can't be my best self because I'm falling apart.
And that's ultimately the lesson here. If kids can't be in an environment where they feel safe to be themselves, then as adults, it comes up in places where we can't be ourselves if we don't. And we learn how to not honor those parts.
Exactly. And you have to start making really hard decisions about your life that can really affect your life. Again, I didn't have control over this situation. I felt like I was being horribly controlled and manipulated in the situation. So I had to literally leave a whole job that was paying my bills. Like if I was able to maybe address things and put boundaries up and do all the things that I, ideally would have been able to work on if I realized how my childhood trauma was affecting me as an adult, I maybe wouldn't have even been put in that situation. I maybe would have avoided it altogether, or at least dealt with
Not let it go on for so long.
Exactly.
Identify it earlier.
At least been able to have dealt with it in a way that didn't require my whole body to be like, girl, we are checking out because this is too much.
Well, and like we can't just snap our fingers and get rid of triggers and make them go away. We're always going to have things that trigger us.
Exactly.
It's just then again, learning how to work through them and learning how
and identifying them.
That's a big thing. And like, just there's things from our childhood that have these adverse effects on our adulthood. And it's just going to automatically show up at very inconvenient times sometimes. But again, like identifying them and working through them is literally the only way to not repress them back into a place that it's going to come out in an unhealthy way.
And to grow and change. I mean, at the end of the day, when you realize that you have these triggers, you realize you've had this trauma in your life, you don't want to continue the cycle. You do. No. I mean, it should, in realizing all of this, it should hopefully make you want to grow and kind of break that cycle. And that's really one of the reasons why we wanted to have this conversation, is because it's not easy.
No.
Please take the moment to, have those emotions, but recognize that you don't have to stay like this. No. You don't have to stay in this situation.
You can be the parent for yourself now that you've always needed. And it sucks that, we have to do it for ourselves, but again, we're the only one who know our emotions and how to comfort our emotions.
As my therapist, shout out to Denise, I love you. Denise loves to remind me, you have to be your number one cheerleader. There is no one at this point. You are a whole grown adult. Yep. You can be in a relationship. You can be married. You can have a family. You can have all this support system. Yes. But at the end of the day, it is you.
Yep.
You are your number one, and you have to be your number one so you can be, that support system for everybody else that's around you.
Yeah. Like, again, you can't operate at your best if you don't take the steps to be your best. So that's so great. This is perfect timing. Wow. Yeah, that was a lot. I
just had another therapy session.
I know, right?
One more episode to go.
That's literally just a drop in the childhood trauma bucket.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's deep. These are deep roots. So we'll be back with another episode on that. But for right now, it's some time for tarot.
Oh my gosh, that's right. I forgot that we do this at the end of the episode. It's been so long.
I know.
I didn't even have my cards ready.
Yeah. So when Ashley gets her cards ready and starts to shuffle, we're going to take some breaths. We're going to take 3 very deep breaths. We're going to do 3 counts in, and I'd like to do 5 counts out, really releasing any of that stress or tension and in that exhale. So we'll start now with your inhale. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another inhale. Exhale for 5. Last one. Really release any of that stress and tension. Ooh, I'm excited about this reading.
I am excited about it too. Listen, y'all are gonna get crusty because it's the death card. But death card came out first.
Yeah.
There's some people that get crusty. Shout out to our friend Crump.
Yeah.
And then the magician and the sun.
Is that the order that they came out in, or is that the order?
No, that's the order they came out in. And I'm just rolling with it.
Yeah,
it's right.
I feel like it was the right order too.
No, I definitely feel like, so for me, again, like I said, some people just see the death card and they're like, bleh. But here's the thing, death just means a new beginning.
Yeah.
It means a change is coming. So if you are in a crusty, dusty, icky situation. I feel like the message that the cards are really getting across is that that situation is going to come to an end, but it's most importantly coming to an end because of you, which I really feel the magician is like that one thing that really symbolizes the fact that you are working on yourself and you are trying to manifest things. You want change to happen. If you want change to happen, then you have to be okay with quote unquote death. You have to be okay with your current circumstances coming to an end. So that new thing that you're trying to bring into your life happens. And then the sun to me is just like a big old hello hug from the universe, just saying like, you are definitely on the right path. You definitely, again, death is not ever a fun thing to deal with. Emotions will happen. Maybe childhood traumas will be triggered, and that's just all part of the ending to start your new beginning.
But the magician
shine like the sun.
And I feel like the magician transforms things. Like
he does.
You know
That's
what I mean?
He's mastered all of the elements. So and the elements on the card, you can see everything. The sword, you can see the cup, you can see the pentacle, you can see the wand. So all of that is in there. And in this card, it's showing that you, the magician, are able to, you've now mastered all of those things. And you're, literally wielding something to make the universe do what you need it to do. So really, this is a great reading. But again,
I love it. And I
it started out with death. I mean, the crust was there, but the crust is falling off. So just keep on pushing forward and have faith in yourself and work on yourself, put yourself first. Take those moments to put yourself first, and you will definitely see sunshiny success when it's all come to an end.
Warm, fuzzy feelings.
Yes.
That's when this comes in. Yes. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want you all to remember that you are worthy and amazing, regardless of all the crap we've dealt with in life from childhood all the way through and continuing into our adulthood. You're doing great out there. So just remember, stay spiritual, my friends.
Yes. Bye.